Thanks for joining us today for MasterCoaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show Buzz Reaction. I'm Ruth Nelson, joined by Hall of Famers Michela, Barbara Tucci, and Brian Gimolero, bringing you the most current issues and trends in volleyball. Our weekly news show has leaders in our sport provide their perspective on the questions that are asked, along with a discussion on topics that are current and ones that are affecting all of us. Our news flash: college sports NIL is heading for a collision with Title IX, as posted by Sportico.com. An interview with Arthur Bryant and Carrie Joshi, attorneys at Bailey Glasser LLP, addressed this issue. For those interested in listening, jump over to our Facebook page. We are now down to the final 8 teams for the NCAA Division III women's volleyball for the semifinals match for November 18th. Seeded number 1, Juniata; number 2, Claremont; number 3, Trinity of Texas; number 4, Wisconsin Eau Claire; number 5, Tufts; number 6, Calvin; 7, Berry; and number 8, MIT. Winner of these matches will move on to the Final Four on November 19th, with the finals on November 20th. Do you know a volleyball player that has an NIL deal? Please have them message us, as we would like to share their story. Register today for the 2021 AVCA convention in Columbus, Ohio, December 15th through the 18th by jumping over to avcaconvention.org. This college season, we have provided our Master Coaches Top 25. We've examined the RPI, the AVCA rankings, the Power 10, and all the other polls, opinions, and options that might occur during this year's very unusual D1 volleyball season. From super seniors, conference realignment, NIL, and the enormous amount of upsets, we're going to turn our attention to the most popular journalist and most talented reporter, and a big advocate for NCAA college women's volleyball. She has set her bar so others are challenged to make the NCAA women's volleyball the #1 watch sport. She does her research, she reviews her results, which allows her personality and creativity make her shows and interviews a must watch. If you want to know who's done what in college women's D1 volleyball,
and I just froze. Did you do
you
it?
just got it. All right, so let's hear what Michela, who's at the airport with some technical difficulties, has to say about our guest today. Mick.
Hey, Ruth, thank you. And I don't know if you're going to be able to use this connection or not, but it's my pleasure to introduce Michaela Chester, one of the most popular people on the NCAA networks right now, because she's a reporter for NCAA.com and NCAA Turner Sports. She's a Georgia Bulldog. She's a lacrosse player from college, and I have to tell you, Michaela, if I'd have found lacrosse before volleyball, I might have done it. Where else do you get a catch and throw sport where they give you a weapon and you can hit people with it? Now, I know you can't do that in the women's game, but the men's game, they give you a lot more swings at people, and I think I would have liked that a lot. But I'm sitting here in the airport, so let me turn it over to you and tell us what you really do.
Yeah, well, first, thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate you having me on your show. Yes, I did play lacrosse, and yes, you could kind of hit people a little more than you think in women's, even though it's technically not allowed, but you could. But yeah, I got into volleyball with work. I always wanted to be a sports reporter for as long as I can remember. I grew up with 3 girls and a dad who probably is the biggest sports fan that you can possibly imagine. And he didn't get that boy, so he chose me, made me sit and watch sports with him his whole life. And I decided from a young age that this is what I wanted to do. Growing up being a woman in sports and a young girl in sports, I had an interest in covering women's sports, and volleyball was one that I was very, very intrigued in. One, because of just how big it is for women athletes and college athletes. I think it's one of the fastest female sports at the collegiate, fastest growing female sports at the collegiate level. So it was one I was really interested in. I think there's phenomenal college volleyball athletes, just great people. I love telling their stories. I interviewed for a job with Warner Media, Turner Sports, for NCAA.com volleyball reporter, and I was given a shot. given my prior experience, I did a lot of internship and prior on-camera experience before this. So I got the job. One thing I will note is that I'm not employed by the NCAA. I'm a reporter for Warner Media and NCAA.com. So although I produce content for NCAA volleyball, it sometimes looks like I work for the NCAA, but I just report on it, and I work alongside the NCAA. I work with a lot of colleagues there.
Well, we'll be sure to be nice to you for sure, because that's always one of the things you worry about. Bob, did you want to ask Michaela about the bracket, or should I go ahead?
Well, I'm going to ask her some easy questions, and Mick, then I'll let you get back to the bracket. You and Brian are going to dive into that pretty deep. But Michaela, how do you decide who you're going to interview for your show?
Yeah, so it's not technically a show, and I don't do like interviews all the time. In the beginning, when I first started, I kind of wanted to interview everybody because I was just starting, and I was like, well, I want to interview this person on Nebraska. I want to interview this person on Texas. I want this. I wanted to do more than they would allow me to do at work. They were like, Michaela, you don't have enough time or hours in the day to interview this many people. And granted, it's not worth doing that many. So I was like, okay, I've got to tone it back. Now I take the approach of, I watch volleyball. It's a big part of my life. It's obviously my job. So I'm constantly involved in watching volleyball. So I just want to tell the stories that I think that people will be most intrigued by. And it's usually things that I'm most intrigued by. So this year, I interviewed John Cook because I was like, what's going on with Nebraska and all of these lineup changes? This isn't normal for them. They're switching around players. So let me ask him. And that's something that I assume people would want to watch. Or somebody has a great game or is having a great year. I try to find storylines that will make a headline now. So I don't want it to be Michaela Chester interviews Logan Eggleston, period. I want it to be Logan Eggleston did this, and here's her talking about it. So I try and make it more of a headline now, as opposed to just talking about finding interviews week after week. Now I try to make it like, I'm only going to do it if there's a story to tell. So
Great.
Well, who is the most enjoyable person to interview?
Wow, this is hard for me because I've interviewed a lot of them, and it's hard sometimes to be completely unbiased, because you're like, I've talked to these female athletes and they're so great, and I kind of grew a personal connection with them. I've met a lot of them in person, so sometimes I find myself rooting for a lot of these players, but I really enjoyed honestly every single one has been overly sweet and kind. Last year, one of the sweetest people I've ever talked to was Jordan Thompson at Cincinnati. Obviously, she's no longer an NCAA athlete, but I just remember she stuck with me of being like, wow, she's really kind, very down to earth. I loved talking to her. I always enjoy talking to Lexi's son, Logan Eggleston, Skylar Fields, Dana Retke, I really enjoy talking to. I've interviewed a lot of them. So I just talked to Amaya Tillman, which was my first time interviewing a Louisville athlete this year. So that was fun. They're all great.
Do you have one that you feel like was just the most knowledgeable about volleyball in general?
Not necessarily, no, because I usually am interviewing them about their team and their team's performance. So I would say they're all pretty even in that regard.
Okay. Well, you obviously have become a fan of volleyball, all right, and that's great. And I think a very good advocate for the sport. I'm gonna go back to Mick and let him talk a little bit about the bracket, because I know he has a lot of questions about that, and we want to find out what you've been thinking about with this bracket. So, Mick?
Sure.
Well, I'm interested in why you decided to do the bracket. That's the most interesting thing, because I think that's a really difficult thing to do. The committee struggles with it every year, so I don't know why any normal person would want to take it on, to tell you the truth. But why did you decide to try to do it?
Well, Mick, I can't tell you I wanted to do it by any means. When it was brought up to me at work, I was like, you're kidding. There is absolutely no way that me as a single human being is going to build an entire bracket by hand without any sort of software or anything. And to be quite honest with you, I went into journalism for a reason. It's because I don't like math or anything on that side. I don't like spreadsheets, nothing. So when they were saying, well, you got to build a bracket and there's a lot more that goes into it than I thought, It wasn't exactly something I wanted to do, but they were like, look, I think this is something cool that we could do that no one else does. And that's something that we try to do a lot with my work is like, there's not a lot of people that are covering college volleyball to the extent of like daily day-to-day stuff, bracket projections, Power 10 rankings. So I'm already doing my weekly rankings and putting my opinion out there. So they were like, why not take it a step further and build an entire bracket? I will say it was not easy. The first time I did it, I want to say it took me a full 8 hours before I even had my 64 teams ranked in order. Like it was not fun. And then on top of that, then you got to do the whole 400-mile thing. So that took another day. So it's not something I wanted to do by any means, but it was a really cool experience. And now doing it twice, you kind of get, every year, I feel like you look at the bracket and there's always something to nitpick about it. Which is inevitable. It's never going to be perfect. But I always found myself saying, well, that doesn't make sense. Why is this team seated there? Why is this team there? Why is this team playing so-and-so in the first round? That's not fair. But after doing the bracket myself and following the protocols, I was like, well, I can't make it perfect either. So it kind of made me feel a little bit for the committee and what they have to do.
So before I throw you to Brian Gimolero, who has some really good questions about the bracket, did you find any weaknesses in the bracket as you were doing it? Anything that caused you to say, whoa, this is maybe...
I think I lost the end of the question there with connection, but I think I got the gist of it.
I just froze.
When building the bracket,
Yeah.
I thought I was going to get like an ideal bracket with, you want to follow the curve as much as you can. You want the top seed playing the lowest seed in the first round and so on and so forth. And it just wasn't possible because of the 400-mile rule. You can't create a flight if somebody is able to drive to a host site. So that's where I ran into the issue where I was like, this bracket is not turning out how I want it to be. At the end, I was like, this is not perfect. I had to put 3-4 seeds in a certain regional and I didn't want it that way, but it's impossible with that 400-mile rule to kind of avoid that, especially when it comes to the Northeast, which I think we're going to get to a little later, more in depth.
Okay, Brian, let's go to you.
I'm just Michela. It's nice to meet you. I'm Brian.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you. I'm still trying to get over MIT still in the tournament. My son went to school there, and I saw the women's volleyball team once, and they've improved. They must have improved. So it was nice to hear. I looked at your bracket, in your most recent bracket, and I want to know, give me the criteria that you used.
Yeah, so I started out completely. So I wish I could show you my spreadsheet because it would be a little easier to explain. But I started out with, okay, I'm going to make my top 16 seeds. And it was very hard to do this not using my own opinion, because my whole job is like, I'm ranking my top 10 teams in my opinion. And now I was being asked to do it in the eyes of the committee. So I just went ahead and I pulled up the committee's criteria. And this is all public information. I don't have any inside access really to what the committee thinks or does. I've done a few interviews with the committee and I was able to kind of use what she told me there. And then in my second bracket prediction, I had the committee's top 10 reveal. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, based on their top 10 reveal, I know the committee values Georgia Tech and UCLA. I know they value the ACC. I know that they really value ranked wins. And then I looked at their criteria and I saw what they looked at. And they look at strength of schedule. They want ranked wins. They're looking at not only top 10 wins, but top 25 and top 50 wins. So they really, really care not just on how many wins you have in your record, but they're valuing teams that are beating ranked teams. So I had to really take that into consideration. I knew that they didn't rank a team like BYU in their top 10. So I was like, well, where are they going to put them within the top 16 seeds? And then also just kind of looking at past years, what they've done, how they value teams. And again, this wasn't perfect. It was kind of just like to the best of my ability. So what was that?
Oh, good. You're good.
Okay. Yeah. So I ranked my top 16 and that took the longest. I used their top 10 reveal and I just did the best educated guess I could do based on their criteria. After that, I went ahead and I did all of my 32 automatic qualifiers. So this part wasn't necessarily easy because I'm one person. As much as I love watching volleyball, I am not watching every single one of these teams play. I have not seen every single one of these teams play. And so I can't judge most of the AQs based on my personal opinion. I just have to go based on their schedules, their records, where they stand within their conference. So I did the best of my ability to pick a projected AQ winner. Obviously, those are not perfect, but I went mostly based on standings and head-to-head matchups. So I just looked within the conference. If two were really close, I was like, okay, well, let me look at their RPI and their head-to-head matchup and see who won there. And that's how I picked my AQs. For the rest of the at-large bids, I went through and I just kind of wrote down every team that I thought was going to be considered. I compared their RPI, their record, how many ranked teams they had wins over. And then again, I just tried to be in the eyes of the committee and be like, okay, I think they're going to put this team in because they're valuing the ACC. I think they're going to do this. So again, nothing's perfect, but I went with my at-large bids and then I ranked them into, obviously my top 16 seeds are the 1 seeds. Then I did 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds, color coded them. Then on top of that, you have to go, okay, I've got my field of 64. I've got them broken down into 4 different seedings. I have my 16 hosts. So I went and made a chart of who can drive within 400 miles to each host site. Then from there, there's some that are flight only, which is like Miami, Florida State, UCF, Stanford, Washington State. Those are going to be your flights only. They couldn't drive anywhere within that was not in their conference. So I started with the teams that only had 1 host site that they could drive to, and they automatically have to be put in that host site, and so on and so forth. And it was trial and error. The actual committee has a software that does this for them. So for me, it was a lot of trial and error of like, okay, I wanted to put a 2 seed and a 3 seed at Penn State, but I ended up having to take them out because yes, West Virginia could drive to Penn State, but they could also drive to Ohio State. They could also drive to Kentucky. They could also drive to Pitt. So I was like, they have other options, whereas Brown, Sacred Heart, and Fairfield do not. So I had no choice there. So that's kind of how it went. And I went through trial and error until I filled out my bracket. It wasn't perfect, but it's hard to do.
So it was easy, huh?
Oh yeah.
For the listeners, it's a very unique championship in that it's 64 teams like women's basketball or men's basketball. And unknown to most of the public is that women's volleyball, who doesn't get as much publicity, has as many teams. We're one of the few sports that's represented at almost every university, through almost 350 Division I teams. But what's unusual is that 64 in the tournament, only 16 are seeded. So given 16 seeds, it's really important who those 16 are, because those 16 are allowed to be home. So everybody's very concerned about being in the 16. That's an important number. And then in the 4, because if you're in the 4, the top 4, you have a chance of playing first, second, third, and fourth rounds at home before you go to the final 4. So everybody's interested in that. Now, there is models for this because it's been going on for years. So people can look at how many at large from different conferences in the past and all that. But this flying, which I find it to be interesting because there's so many more teams in the East than in the West. We end up flying some Eastern teams or some Western teams because of the second rule, and that is you can't play the first 2 rounds within your own conference. So I just wanted to throw those out there because it makes it almost impossible. So some teams away from 400 miles will end up flying, maybe about 10 of those teams or even more.
The only way we could create a flight based on the criteria was if there are more teams that could drive to a host than slots allowed. So it's, you know, it ends up we end up having to fly some teams that could drive to some of those Northeast schools.
But there is one inherent problem, right, Brian, with the Penn State deal, because every year for the past 10 years, they've had an easy road right into the third and fourth rounds. Why not fly at least one team in, or have a West Virginia with a higher seed come up there, so that it, one, is more fair, and two, so it helps Penn State also because they play a higher seed. They have to perform early. That gets them ready for the regionals. Michaela, tell me if I'm wrong, but if we follow your second tournament placing, Penn State plays very weak teams first and second round, and then runs right into Texas in the very first round of the regionals, and probably is not going to be ready for that kind of competition because they played such weak competition the week before.
Yeah, so this was the one thing that when I was making my bracket, I knew in years past that this was always something that people talked about, right? That Penn State and Pitt and those Northeast hosts get easier first and second rounds and regional matchups. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do everything I can not to do that. And I started building the bracket, and the first school that could drive to the highest ranked school in my hypothetical bracket that could drive to Penn State was West Virginia, like you mentioned, and below them was Dayton. So I immediately said, okay, I'm putting West Virginia at Penn State, and I'm doing it because they need to have a 2 or 3 seed in that regional. But as I went on, I realized it couldn't happen because I'm not allowed by the NCAA rules to create a flight if I don't have to. And when I did it with West Virginia there, I ended up creating way more flights when it was all said and done than if I were to go ahead and just go put those schools that are 4 seeds, because Brown, Towson, Colgate, Fairfield, Sacred Heart, UMBC, and Delaware State can drive within 400 miles to Penn State. And they can't go elsewhere. So I was like stuck in the situation where it was like, I wish it were different, but these are just the rules. I'm not the committee. I can't make an exception. I wish I was, but it is what it is. And in a perfect world, it wouldn't be that way, but that's how it is in the Northeast.
Yeah. Our hope was the committee would listen to this show. And we wanted to expose that in hopes they would do something about that this time. So thank you for helping us with that. But Ruth Nelson has 2 really good questions that we have to get in here because I think you'll enjoy them. Go, Ruth.
Sure.
Okay, I have 4, but I only get to ask 2. But one of them may be yes or no. Who helps you gather all this data? Because it is more than a one-woman show.
So most of it I do by myself, but I do have an NCAA liaison who helps me. At the end of the day, it's all my opinion, and he doesn't make any choices or anything like that. But sometimes it's nice to have a second set of eyes. He has been in the committee's room for the past 3 years. Obviously, he's not a part of the committee, but he has seen that side of it that I haven't seen personally. So it's nice to have his set of eyes. When I first made my bracket, I sent it to him and he was like, you have maybe 3 regionals where you have an in-conference matchup in the first or second round. And I'm like, oh, gotta start over, because it's just so much for one person that there's oversights and there's things that I missed. So he was a nice second set of eyes. And sometimes he just challenges me to be like, look, you need to look at it from this perspective, as opposed to just looking at it with your opinion or looking at it in this way, which it's nice to have because he kind of has that NCAA perspective that I don't have as a reporter. So he gives me a second set of eyes to help. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it's all my opinion and my choices out there.
Okay, next one. For all those young aspiring sports reporters, what is the best way to begin their career?
There's a lot of answers to this, and I'll go quick because I know we're running out of time, but there is this new age where it's what we're doing now. Everything, people are consuming their sports on digital platforms now, which is a really cool new avenue that a lot of people don't know about. And it didn't used to be the way. Back in the day, even maybe 5 years ago, if you wanted to be an on-camera sports talent, you had to go to a local news station and start that route. Now there's digital platforms where they're like, look, we're having on-camera talents for our social media, for our website. So like I'm a talent and reporter for NCAA.com. And so I get to do kind of all of it. I do on-camera videos, I write, I edit, I film, I build graphics, I do all of it. So I think it's a really cool new avenue and way that reporters can start is in the digital platform.
Wow, that's great. All right, now this one's going to have to be a quick one because the last question is going to take a little longer. Where do you think women's volleyball will be in the next 5 to 10 years in mainstream media or in social media outlets?
I think it's going to grow a lot, and it already has in the past 3 years that I've been covering the sport. Even when I first started, I don't even think it was as big as it was now. And diving into it now, there's such a niche audience that loves volleyball, and you don't realize how many people love volleyball. And I feel like now it's getting out there, it's growing. Volleyball is one of our most viewed sports on NCAA.com, and that's a cool thing to think about because we have all of the collegiate sports. So it's big and people don't realize that, and it's already growing. I think it's going to grow even more on social media and digital platforms. Especially.
Okay, here you go. Last question. What are your predictions? And I'm not going to do the one they told me to ask you, but I'm going to say, who are the final 4 are you selecting? Look at Mick laughing because he wanted me to do who's going to win, but who's the final 4? Who's your picks?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I'm not going to tell you who I think is going to win yet. 1, because I'm not sure. And 2, because I'm going to do a full bracket reveal after the selection show where I make my full picks. If I had to choose right now, I 100% think that Louisville and Texas are going to be in the national semifinals without a doubt. I'm going to have a very hard time choosing between those 2 teams because I think they're just incredible volleyball teams. Aside from Louisville and Texas, the next 2 are very hard. I do think Wisconsin is going to get there just because of the experience of getting there the past 2 years. And, you know, Dana Redke, this is a team that I think can win a championship, but the difference between them and Louisville and Texas is that if they don't have it all working together, they can be beaten. Like if you slow down Dana Redke.
Okay, wait a second. You can't go into details. I need 3 and 4.
Oh,
because we are out of time. Who's 3 and 4?
Okay, I'll go Wisconsin. And for the 4th one, I'm going to pick a wild one.
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Okay, who's your 4th? Because we are out of time.
Said Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay. Michaela, we want to thank you for your hard work on all the research that's needed to make your information so relevant to all viewers, whether they're coaches, fans, players, or administrators. We need more Michaela Chesters in our corner to continue to put volleyball in the front of the line of our media. And we thank you for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Michella.
Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you.
Missed one of our shows? Jump over to Instagram and click on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook at Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. Want to make a difference? Please remember to renew your AVCA membership. This one organization that represents all coaches at all levels when lobbying for the changes that are needed in our sport. And you can make a difference by registering at avca.org. We now close out today's buzz, and please stay on as Master Coaches not only will recap today's buzz, but will provide some great information on some of their sessions at the AVCA convention. A special thanks to our Buzz and Buzz Reaction digital partner, Dr. John Foreman, for being part of our show and being an influencer in our sport. For those joining us for the Buzz Reaction for the first time, today we'll continue with our recap of today's Buzz on ranking and methods of selecting the 64 teams, and at the end, a discussion on sessions for the upcoming AVCA convention as well. All right, Master Coaches, let's jump in with the recap today.
Well, Ruth, you got your 4 questions in, didn't you?
Yay! I
Mick,
did.
Go ahead.
Well, there was quite a few
Well-
questions we didn't get to, Mick. Why don't you go over some of those?
Yeah, I'm having problems here with my
He's in slow motion.
well, a couple of things. Yeah, I'm having my internet's unstable here. So if you can hear me, I'll go ahead.
Yep.
Yes, we got you.
Okay, okay. So I played out Michela's bracket. It is a great tournament from the standpoint of the matchups in the regionals. There are no bad matchups in the regionals. I mean, you've got Kentucky and Louisville playing at Louisville in the regionals. You've got Penn State. She might worry about Penn State and Texas. The way Penn State's playing, they could win the Big Ten right now, and they might come out against Texas if that's the way the committee does it. But she did a really good job. The thing that's Brian and I always discuss is BYU and Western Kentucky, because of their schedule, are being devalued. Yet when we put the statistics in for how their season is going, it is amazing how well they're doing. In fact, in some cases, they rank first and second in statistical areas that have in the past dictated who's won the tournament and the finish of the tournament. Brian's offensive percentage versus the opponent's hitting percentage has been effective up to 90% in conference play, as indicated by John Foreman, who's done the research on that. And the kills per set, or points per set, excuse me, of somewhere around 18 and a half is pretty true, up to about 77%. And it is a measurement that holds true when the teams actually play. The committee uses none of the statistical information that the teams produce themselves. Everything else is some kind of a poll or somebody's opinion. And I think we've got some things to show you here. So if you look, you see all of these things up Ruth has up. We took the top 16 teams. We got the AVCA poll first, and then we've got the RPI for the teams. Then we've got, what is the third one?
Michaela.
MIC.
Yeah, Michaela.
Oh, that's
Michaela's,
Michela's prediction. Right. And then the fourth one is Brian's percentages, offensive versus opponents.
Oh,
And then the fifth one is
Points per set.
the points per set. And then the last one is MasterCoaches poll.
mhm.
So if you look at the fourth and fifth columns, you'll see where the teams rank that were ranked by the AVCA. The AVCA has Louisville first, Texas second, Pitt third, and BYU fourth. The percentage holds true with those four, or three of those four. It has BYU first, it has Texas third, it has Louisville fourth, but it has Pitt eighth. And that's very interesting in that particular one. And then in the points per set, which is the fifth column, Louisville is ninth, Texas is fourth. I can't see the lines through there that Ruth had, but BYU is first again. So in both of those statistical areas, BYU comes out first. Could we be missing something? And the
Well,
other
it looks
one,
like our master coaches poll should probably have BYU number 1.
Well, let me go over that. I looked at it. I thought it was interesting that she picked Louisville, the top Final Four. She picked Louisville, Texas, and Wisconsin. And those are in my prediction, hitting percentage 4, hitting percentage again, are the second, third, and fourth. So she picks 3 of the 4 teams that I think, going by my system, would be 3 of the top teams. So she sees it the same way for different reasons. The 4th team, like you just said, Bob, is BYU. I think that BYU, if they become a top 4 seed, will go to the Final Four. The problem is, I don't think they're going to get they'll get that seed, and they're going to end up having to fight their way through somebody's tough home court. But I do believe that that's the 4th team. She picked Minnesota. I actually think BYU is in that 4.
Well,
we have
BYU,
Wisconsin's actually on 5 on the percentage.
Right.
Brian.
Yeah. Right. Wisconsin 5. So yeah, not foolproof. But the only thing I don't see on here, I don't have a 2. Who's number 2 on that? I don't see a 2. I don't know.
Well, 2, I'll tell you who number 2 is, and they're not on there. Number 2 is Western Kentucky.
There you go. I thought it might be.
Yeah, Western Kentucky is way up there, and nobody's giving them anything more than 18 or 19 on the seeds because of their schedule, but their volume of work throughout the year is really important. And I know what everybody says. Well, they're playing easier teams. Listen, you can play against the Sisters of the Poor, but you still have to hit the ball on the floor. And coaches know it's very difficult to do that no matter who you're playing against. So when you put up numbers like they're putting up all season, it's not the opponents, it's your team doing the work. And that's the majority of the body of work.
I think that's true. I wish that BYU had played a little tougher preseason and Western Kentucky played a tougher preseason, and we'd have a better look, better idea.
I think that flight attendant wants to ask a question, Mick.
Who does?
The flight attendant.
Okay. Can you hear her?
Yeah, she sounded pretty good. She wanted to know, how is this possible that MasterCoaches has selected 3 of the top 4 that most people are talking about? I mean, how's that work?
Yeah, there's some things there's some things I'd like to bring up. One is, I think it's actually easier than she said to do this bracket because it's been done so many times, and it's pretty close this year, the years in the past. I think starting from scratch is difficult. I looked at it, and there's 22 tournaments, but maybe 4 tournaments at the end of the year, only 4 of them, if there was upsets. If there was an upset, only 4 of them would then bring a second team from their conference into the tournament and take away 4 at-large bids. But basically there's going to be about 28 at-large teams. So given that, I think the committee will pick up from RPI from 42 to 47. If you're an RPI from between 42 and 47, up till that number, you'll probably get in. And but basically they'll go through RPI. The only change might be made because of geography. My problem with all this is that when I listen to the NCAA committee's reports, they always state that how much money they saved. And I just, that's contrary to what a sporting event should be. As coaches, we always preach to our athletes fairness and level playing field for competition. And I think the committee should push the NCAA to spend a little more money and start seeding 64 teams and forget about saving money, about travel. The NCAA's got a lot of money. And if they got this many schools representing their sport, they should seed the tournament, and it should be more fair so that everybody's on a level playing field when the competition begins.
Well, at least maybe seed 32 would be the first compromise here.
Yeah.
But they're not worried about, saving money for, the basketballs. So
I'm not worried at all. And the
Yeah.
NCAA contract says for basketball and to upgrade all other championships. So let's upgrade volleyball.
Well, they did upgrade volleyball. They're allowing the 15th player to go ahead and stand on the sidelines. They're putting Terraflex in. So they did upgrade. Didn't you see that most recent on social media? But that's not the upgrade we want. I have a question for you guys. Okay, so conference, who's going to get the at-large bids? I mean, what are the conferences? Because it normally is a little bit different than it is this year.
All right, let me see if I can.
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. Her predictions are pretty good. When you take the top 5 conferences, you go all through, go through it. You can see the Big 10, confused sometimes between 12, 10, but Big 10 is going to have like 8, maybe 8 teams, Pac-10 maybe 6 teams. But some of the smaller conferences are only going to get 1, and some are going to get 2, like the BYU, San Diego, Pepperdine might all get in. But basically the Big 5 are getting most of the at-large spots. Power 5.
I think that they should be looking at the smaller conferences a little bit more. And I'll say bubble teams, Big 10, Illinois, bubble team in the Pac-12 is who? Arizona, I think. I don't think they get in, or Arizona State doesn't get in. SC doesn't get in. None of those teams probably deserve to be in the tournament this year. I don't think you should go lower than Miami in the ACC. I think Miami's tied for 3rd now. I think they have 4 teams that get in out of the ACC. I think the SEC, Mississippi State, nobody's talked about them. They're in a position to actually win the league in the SEC, and nobody's even giving them a lot of votes. So Mississippi State is a team that probably deserves to be in. But I think South Carolina and there's another team that I had thought about there does not probably deserve to get in this year. And there are teams that, like Western Kentucky and Rice, are in the same conference. I think both those teams deserve to get in. They're both undefeated on their sides of the conference. They both play great competition this year. I think both those teams deserve to be in the tournament. And maybe in the MAC conference, both Ball State and Bowling Green need to be in. Both have done very well. And Ohio in the MAC is challenging right now. Beat Bowling Green in 5 the other night. So that's another conference to look at. And then you've got Creighton and Marquette. And St. John's had gotten in before, but now UConn has come out and playing well in that conference, the Big East, I believe. And so you want to look at that a little bit. I'm not sure that the Power Fives deserve to go down as deep as they're going unless they show that they can play a little bit better.
Well, what the ones you're talking about, Mick, in most cases, the RPI is too low, too high, too bad. Okay. And I don't think they're going to get in. I only think those are generally 1-team conferences. Creighton and Marquette are both in without a doubt, but some of those are going to only have 1 team.
Well, Ball State is at 33.
Yeah, Ball State
and Bowling Green is under 50.
Yeah, there's going to be some real questions. Bowling Green right now is 59, but by the way, this is done by your wife, so I appreciate having this all at my fingertips.
Okay, so I want, Bob, you and I need to give a shout out to Mississippi State because you were in the SEC and so was I, and they have never been out of the cellar.
No, they were always, last place or second to last place.
They are in the cellar, and we got to say a special shout out to Mississippi State for what a great season they've had. And I'm not going to tout much on it, but I just think that that's a lot of people, when you come from the bottom in a good conference and not having as much money as Florida, LSU, and Kentucky, and moving the way they've moved, I'm going to say hooray for Mississippi State.
Now, unfortunately, I think they're going to have to win the SEC to be able to get in the tournament right now.
Okay, I just said I was shouting out. Now, whatever they're going to finish, whatever they've done a great job.
I
All right.
think that would be a travesty if they didn't get into the
I
tournament.
think they're going to get in, Bob, my opinion. I think all four from that conference are going to get in, including Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, including, I noticed you give that dig, including Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, that's because Bob legacy there.
That's
Just
right. His legacy is there. Okay, well, our time is up on this topic, and now we're going to go to the NCAA AVCA convention to talk a little bit about some of the sessions. So who wants to jump in? Mick.
Well, I'll jump in on one that have been invited to participate in, besides the ones that we're doing. I'm doing a session with Jim Stone on elite volleyball skills on Wednesday afternoon. And one of the things that's exciting for me is Jim is set up, he is going to put an offense out on the floor, and I'm supposed to construct a defense that will best stop his offense.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I love the challenge, and I don't know how this is going to work out, but I don't think you want to miss it because it's going to be pretty good, because he's pretty sure that he's going to beat up on me, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to let him do that. So that's one of the things that I'm involved in. The other one is a mentorship that we actually had Ashley Preston on to talk about coaches and mentors. And there's been recent research out, and this is actually from Jim Stone also, on the wrong people are getting the mentors. The people that need the mentors won't hire them. But in many schools, basketball, baseball, and football bring in consultants. They bring in mentors for the coaches to get different opinions. And the research showed that the coaches most hungry to win are the people most likely to bring in consultants and mentors. The people that don't are the people that seemingly are afraid it makes them look bad, and they're not winning. And it's just the opposite of what you would think. So there's going to be some pretty good things said in Ashley Preston's presentation. I think, Ruth, you're in there. I don't know if Bob's in there or not, but we should have a lot of fun with that one.
Well, Nikki is actually one of her assistant coaches, was when Ashley was at Fullerton, and now she's at University of New Orleans. So Nikki, I've actually mentored. She's one of my BYOP instructors also for BYOP Southern California. And she's been with them. She actually was at junior college first, and then she was at club. And before that, she was having little kids. So now she's spending all her time at the D1 level, and mentoring for her has been just to have a sounding board. And it's not necessarily that they need our opinion. They just need someone to listen to and throw out ideas. And I think that if anything, if you don't have good mentors and you don't have good role models, how do you ever succeed? Maybe that's something that Bob and Brian can address. How do people, I'm a first year coach, and I mean, I don't have any experience, and I've got a D1 coaching, and I was an assistant coach at a school that was a mid-level school. How do I deal with this?
Well, I think one of the concerns by coaches is that what Mick said is that they're afraid they're going to look bad or be questioned, and to hire a service and bring someone in, the person mentoring cannot work with players. They can only work with coaches. So the players will never see the interaction or the adjustments or the changes, or the coach doesn't have to feel threatened by it. And I think that it can advance their knowledge so quickly and get them more prepared to be more successful. It's foolish not to, like in other sports, especially sports getting a lot of publicity and money. This is going on all the time. This is a regular procedure, and I think that it should be part of volleyball.
So who was your first mentor?
Mine?
Yeah.
My mentor is I sat in the gym and watched Ari when I was a young guy, and got to watch.
Yeah, Ruth, I thought, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Ruth, I thought Ruth was suggesting that you and Bob should get mentors right now. I do.
No, yeah, mostly about mental health that we need.
So did you guys have role models or did you have mentors?
I had consultants.
Okay.
I had a consultant, probably 25 of the 45 years I coached. Different people, but and I paid them yearly, and it was absolutely one of the most beneficial things I've ever done.
Okay, Bob, how about you? Role models or mentors?
Well, I think I've had some mentors over the years. It wasn't somebody that I necessarily paid and brought in and wasn't quite as organized as it is now. I think, Brian's right. In your basketballs, your footballs, your baseballs, you're getting groups like the master coaches that will send somebody out or will be somebody that's going to actually, mentor a particular coach in a particular location. It's a little bit more organized now. Years ago, it was, people that you knew and you met through the game.
Okay. So my first mentor was Dallas Cowboys head coach Tom Landry. He was my role model first. And then in 1997, I was in business with him. Then he became a role model. So he's my mentor, and day-to-day role model. I never knew him and just worked around because of Special Olympics. So I think that a lot of times volleyball coaches may think their mentor or role model or consultant, of course, that's different. They don't have to be in your sport because they may be in psychology. They may be in mental training. So you can get, I always say, surround yourself with role models and mentors and surround yourself with the best ones.
Good for you, Ruth. That was a grill plus for you to be able to do that.
Well, I would have never believed it. I asked Tom Landry when I went in business with him, I said, what is the most memorable event you remember when you were coaching? He says, when I was player coach for New York. And I said, why is that? And he said, because you can make all the decisions on the field right then without having to have a coach yell in what should be done.
There you go.
Ruth, that's pretty good. Unlike Bob, you can remember your mentors and consultants.
that was my problem. I had Bob Euchre.
Okay, so do I get to talk about my session?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Ruth.
Okay, so BYOP, that's not, I have to remind parents, it's not bring your own photographer. Because at 10 and under, that's what parents think. We are doing a demonstration on Saturday, December 18th from 11:30 to 12:30. This will be the first time. Now we've done 7 of these, but this will be the first time I've had families from 3 different programs: BYOP Cincinnati, BYOP Net Results, and BYOP Lovejoy. So I'm able to bring in different instructors and be joined by Nikki from BYOP SoCal. And we're going to be able to utilize a 10-year-old that she's been my host on my show. We're going to use her to analyze young kids, and the viewers and the people participating, depending on if you're doing virtual or not, you're going to get to see these young kids show their parents how to make certain movements and how to do the 4 basic skills of volleyball.
Ruth, I want to interject. I think every club in this country needs to bring you in and use your program to develop young kids. And I sincerely mean it. It's so organized. It's so good. You can bring your teachers in, spread them around the country, and really develop young kids in volleyball. It's such a positive experience, and everybody needs to watch your demonstration.
Yeah, isn't the best thing about it is it's actually a certification program. The coaches come in and they actually go through a program where they are certified. It's just not come in and watch and copy.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Well,
Now, I do have one thing that I wanted to ask you guys because we have a few more minutes. What are you guys doing this summer? I think you've got a couple clinics planned. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you where they are, but the master coach, Bob Bertucci, and I'm very good at his name now, Bertucci, where Mick had to teach me how to say his last name when we started 79 weeks ago.
Those
What are we doing?
Italian
What's
names are
happening?
impossible. I know.
What are we doing?
Well, we do have quite a few. We have two master coaches programs set up right now. One in Dallas and one in Abilene, Texas, that we're already set up to do.
Okay, and that's June 4th and 5th in Abilene, Texas,
That's right,
and in May in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas.
We just haven't come up with the date yet. So we're waiting for our executive secretary to finalize the dates. I love it.
I like that better than fearless leader.
I want to say something about Michaela.
Mhm.
She was refreshing.
Mhm.
And to
Yeah.
think that somebody was in another sport and maybe hasn't played in our sport. Maybe she did some recreation. We never asked for that. But for her to take on a task, now she did tell us that someone put the 64 on top of her. She didn't come up with that.
Mhm.
But what a refreshing, energetic, thought after, and I'm going to say she's one of my favorite guests that we've had on.
Well, I thought she was good to tell us that she actually used the the lacrosse stick a little bit more like the men than the women rules allow. I thought that said it all about her right there.
I like that she was kneeling on the table to interview one of the, like Carrie Walsh,
Yeah.
so she could get the microphone high enough for Carrie. I thought that.
And that was, oh, Brian, man, you are really quick to be able to notice that. That's
I told Ruth earlier that the little TV I did for the last 3 seasons, every one of our sideline reporters was a volleyball player, an ex-volleyball player. And I told all of them, because it was true, that I was glad that I was older because they were going to take my job pretty quickly. And I wanted to be out of that because they were so talented. They were really talented young people. And the women athletes in this country, and I'm speaking mostly for volleyball players, are, if I owned a business, I'd hire them. Incredibly talented young people.
okay. Well, you know what? Our time is up.
It's about time.
You guys were just absolutely, all of our viewers for a buzz reaction were fantastic. Now we're going to make a very special shout out to over 112 guests who have shared their insights with us over the last 78 weeks. For those coaches that are interested in our consulting services, please go directly to our website at www.volleyballmastercoaches.com and click on our contact form, and we'll get back to you as soon as our executive secretaries answer the emails. And our small gentleman smiling, that will be the gentleman that will come after you. Hall of Famers with years of success bring you drills across all positions, teaching cues for all ages and ability, offensive, defensive strategies, and much more. For the newest enhancement implemented by the 2021 D1 Women's Volleyball Championships and the new changes for all the NCAA schools, jump over to www.ncaa.org. 2021 AVCA Convention in Columbus, Ohio. You will see most of us there. And you can jump over to avcaconvention.org to register today. Be sure to tell your friends about our weekly news show. And don't forget to send your questions or your feedback from our buzz or buzz reaction. All right, thanks for joining us today, and see you next week on the Buzz.